Right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome both here in the audience at City Hall. We got a couple of people here, and then also folks at home watching on your computer screens. We also have 3 remote viewing locations, one out at Doxa Church, another one at the Boys and Girls Club, and another one at the clubhouse down there at the Fairways off of Traceway. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. I'm sure folks will keep joining as we go through throughout the night. And I just wanted to kind of lead in, letting everybody know that we're planning on having probably about a half an hour of dialogue, specifically from Metro Transit, talking about Fitchburg specific routes, and we'll be reviewing existing conditions, what the existing routes look like, and what changes are proposed. These changes will not take effect until the summer of 2023. And we'll note kind of some of the rationale that went into how Metro and the city of Fitchburg went about designing these routes, both in Fitchburg specifically and also kind of in the region, and how that connects to the regional system. And then after we go through that presentation, we will open it up for questions and answers. I'd ask you to please hold your questions until that time, just so we can make sure we're getting through it. If there's a clarifying question, feel free to raise your hand. I'll be monitoring that, and we'll stop the presenters at that time. During the questions and answers, I'll just kind of remind folks at that time as well. We're specifically looking for, to the extent possible, kind of general questions that everybody can kind of benefit from. I love to hear specifically route to route, and get into the weeds. But if we run out of time, we can always answer those questions, those specific, how am I going to get from here to there, with the written chat. So if you have a question, we can take that in the chat. So again, only questions in the chat, no comments. And then separately, also you can raise your hand if you'd rather kind of articulate your comment at home. We'll be answering those questions at the remote viewing areas. Basically, they'll go to the facilitator. The facilitator will let us know your questions. So with that, I'd really like to welcome Mike Chickvala from Metro Transit. He is the project manager for the network redesign. We also have a consultant, Melissa, who's joining us tonight. And with that, Mike, feel free to take it away.
Thanks. Thank you, Andrew. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm going to try to share my screen here. I hope you'll let me know if that doesn't work. Okay, so I'm Mike Chickvala again. I'm a transportation planner with Metro Transit in the city of Madison. I also have Melissa Huggins here from Urban Assets, who is helping us with the project. I have a couple other colleagues here from Metro Transit, Mick Roosh and Sean Hedgepeth. So you may hear them chiming in later. Anyway, thank you and welcome. This is a Transit Network Redesign Public Information Meeting. Today, as Andrew talked about, we'll be talking specifically about the changes proposed in Fitchburg and how that plan is evolving, and as well as the larger project that looks at the regional system and how it fits in with Madison and the other places that Metro serves. The Transit Network Redesign is a project to redesign the route system in a way that better meets the needs of Madison area residents and businesses. We have a website here, mymetrobus.com/redesign. Mymetrobus.com is our normal website with all of our routes and schedules and other information. And then we have a specific redesign page for it that has all of the information that you'll see here today, as well as a lot of other in-depth analysis and planning work that we've done so far. When we talk about the transit network, this is primarily what we're talking about, where the routes go, but there's a separate component to this, which is how often the routes run. So this map just shows where the routes go, but the frequency is important as well. This was our pre-COVID transit network. Some of these routes have been suspended since COVID. A lot of them were the rush hour commuter routes, but not all of them. So as you can see, the existing network is designed a lot around 4 transfer points, west and south, which serve a lot of the Fitchburg service, but also east and north. A lot of these routes are very infrequent. They come every 30 to 60 minutes. We have a lot of routes that only run at rush hour or only run during weekdays or only run on weekends. We have a lot of deviations, as you can see, as the routes kind of wind through the neighborhoods. We also have a lot of things like one-way loops and other things that make the system fairly complicated. So why are we doing the transit network redesign now? There are a couple reasons why this is a good time to do the transit network redesign. One is addressing long-standing issues and discrepancies with our transit system. Primarily people that have very long travel times, particularly in peripheral areas, and people making longer trips. There's all the waiting and the riding, and people who have trips that take over an hour, and it just takes a very long time. And so the bus is often there, but it's not a practical solution for a lot of people. Secondly, as we recover from COVID-19, we'd like to recover in a way that reflects future needs and future travel demands. I just think we're still kind of trying to understand how those changes are going to happen, but we do see some changes that are happening. And then finally, we have a separate project, Bus Rapid Transit, which will bring frequent service and high quality, high capacity service in the east-west corridor that will serve as the spine of the new transit system. And so one thing we could do is simply make some changes along that east-west corridor, but not make any large-scale changes to the system. But as we start pulling apart the routes along the BRT corridor, a lot of the routes touch other routes, and there's a kind of a mesh system that you start pulling apart some of them, and you've kind of unraveled the whole thing. So we'd like to take this opportunity to instead look at the entire network, redesign the whole system with kind of a blank slate approach. I see Andrew has his hand up. Andrew, do you have a question?
Nope, sorry. Just testing the functionality. Thanks, sorry.
It works, thank you. Looking at the map, this red line here is the east-west bus rapid transit line. So that will be the central spine with frequent service, bus only lanes along much of the corridor, transit signal priority, and then stations that will look more like rail stations as opposed to bus stops. We'll have a second bus rapid transit line, which will be this north-south line here. So we'd like to understand the exact routing for the north-south line, and then a third Middleton line. And so then the transit network redesign focuses on all of the areas outside of the bus rapid transit system. So basically every other route besides these three routes, but also including where the ends of the green line and the blue line will be outside of the BRT corridor. When we think about what the transit system is doing for us, there are two high-level goals that we can accomplish with our bus system. One goal is the ridership goal, that goal being to get as many people on the bus as possible, attract more people to the system, and see the ridership grow. We can do that by concentrating transit service onto fewer routes on busy streets with more frequent service. Because we have fewer routes and more direct routes, we're able to have more buses on each route, and so those routes are more frequent. And that's kind of shown graphically with this map on the upper right with the red lines here. The other goal is the coverage goal. The coverage goal says we want to provide some level of transit service to as many people in the community as possible. We do that by having more routes that are less direct and have more deviations into neighborhoods. And because we have more routes, we have fewer buses on each route. And so as a result, each route is less frequent. And so that's the coverage goal. We, of course, don't have to be on one extreme or the other. We can be somewhere in between coverage and ridership. And so we spent the first half of this project asking the public, stakeholders, and policymakers where on this coverage to ridership spectrum the new transit network should be. And broadly, what we've been told is people support a ridership mostly system. So moving in the direction of that ridership strategy with fewer routes, more direct routes, and more frequent service, but not all the way. So we still do want to have some lower frequency service to reach more places so that we can provide coverage where it's needed. So again, moving in that ridership direction, and that's what we're trying to implement with the last half of this project. So we have hired Jarrett Walker and Associates, which is a transit planning firm that does specifically this type of work. They've done work in other cities in the US as well as internationally. And so we started by having them draw a scratch, a rough draft of a pure ridership alternative and a pure coverage alternative. I'm showing you the ridership alternative because, as I mentioned, we're trying to move in that ridership direction. So we did that, and then we focused on a couple areas to look at how some of those routes should be refined to, again, come back from that pure ridership scenario to add coverage where it's needed. And we continue to refine the entire system map. So that's where we are today. And that has resulted in this draft plan map. So I'll stop here and pause for just a second so that I can walk you through the details of this draft plan map. There are two colors that you're mainly seeing here, red and blue. The routes that are drawn in red are frequent routes, routes that operate every 15 minutes throughout the majority of the weekday. So you can see Route A here in the east-west corridor. That's the east-west bus rapid transit route. Route B is the north-south bus rapid transit route. Route F is the Middleton bus rapid transit route. And we have two other central Madison routes that run every 15 minutes throughout the day. That's routes C and D. As they get towards the peripheral areas of Madison and head into other communities, you'll see them split. So for example, on the west side of Route D here, Route D splits into D1 and D2. So the bus keeps going, but it will go either left as D2 or right as D1. And so when it does that, because you have alternating buses doing one thing or the other, you end up with less frequent service on those branches. So routes D1 and D2 run every 30 minutes throughout the majority of the weekday. The blue lines, as I implied, run every 30 minutes. You can see that there are no transfer points. So in the new network, people would make transfers where routes more naturally cross each other. We have a handful of spots here, like this far west end of Route A, where we'll build a new park and ride and transit facility, where the F, A, D1, and 55 come together. We'll have a handful of routes near Eau Claire Station on Sheboygan Avenue, where the BRT lines kind of split, and so there'll be people making transfers there. Whitney Way and Mineral Point. Downtown will continue to be a hub where people are transferring between a lot of different routes, as well as like Milwaukee and Milwaukee Street in East Washington, East Town Mall, and so forth. Park and Badger, where the South Transfer Point currently is, we will continue to have transfers going on there. Our long-term goal there is to replace the South Transfer Point with a new bus rapid transit station for the B line. I'll talk about that just briefly. Route B will be the second bus rapid transit line. We will implement whatever service pattern ultimately will be the service pattern for Route B with this project in 2023. We will then come back after the Route A bus rapid transit project is done and do the same or similar infrastructure improvements along Route B. So perhaps in the later 2020s, Route B will get the same infrastructure, the bus lanes, the transit signal priority, the bus rapid transit stations that we'll be building on Route A. We'll actually acquire the buses for Route B at the same time that we acquire the buses for Route A. And there are some reasons for that that are sort of detailed, but so you'll see the bus rapid transit buses on Route B in as early as 2024. We have what we're informally calling an orbital series of routes, Route H, that starts on the west side and kind of orbits around central Madison along the Beltline corridor and then up the Highway 51 Stoughton Road corridor towards East Town Mall. It's organized as 3 routes, the G, H, and P, but they'll be continuous. One route will turn into another, and so you'll be able to make seamless trips across the south and east edges of the city. We do have a handful of rush hour only routes, such as routes X, Y, and Z. Route Z, as we're showing here, would only operate during the rush hour, so every 30 minutes from roughly 6 in the morning to 8:30 or so. And then in the afternoon again from about 4 o'clock to 6:30 or so. With this project, we are trying to remain budget neutral. So that includes being budget neutral in the system as a whole. Also, we're trying to hold to the budgets of our partnering neighbors, such as the city of Fitchburg, the city of Middleton, and other partners that we partner with. So again, this map is on our website, mymetrobus.com/redesign. And that was a quick preview of it. So one thing that we can do to assess the success of a new transit network is ask, in a given period of time, such as 45 minutes, how far can you get on the bus? This dark gray area, this inner dark gray blob, is how far you can get in 45 minutes on the current network from this particular location, Fish Hatchery and Post. The lighter blue blob is how far you can get in 45 minutes with the draft plan network. And that includes waiting for the bus, walking to the bus stop, also riding the bus, transferring, and then walking to wherever your destination is. So we, of course, don't really care how far you can get. What we really care about is how many things you can access. Destinations are a little bit harder to quantify than where people live. People travel for a lot of reasons, but one of the major reasons that they travel for is to go to work. And we do have pretty good employment data. So we have asked ourselves then, so from this point, how many jobs can you reach? And then we can do that not only for this point, but for every point around the Madison area. And then we come up with this map. So this map shows where you're gaining and losing access. In other words, from any point in the area, are you gaining access to more jobs, or are you losing access to jobs? And so you can see throughout most of the system, we're gaining access to jobs. We have more jobs that we can get to in 45 minutes with the draft plan than the current network. There are some places where we're losing access to jobs. And so we're looking at those areas specifically, but just to walk you through this a little bit, you can kind of see the bus rapid transit line on the north and north-south and east-west corridors where we're gaining pretty significant access. And I should also mention that these hexagons are also indicative of the density, the residential density. So the hexagons with more dots in them that look darker have more people living in them. And so we're also targeting where more people live. So anyway, I'm going to now transition a little bit and talk more specifically about the city of Fitchburg. So if we look at the city, and this yellow line here is the rough boundary between Madison and Fitchburg. So I'll just walk you through this quickly. We have Route 52 that runs hourly on the west side of the city. Route 18, which touches Fitchburg in its east-west orientation, generally running every 30 minutes. Route 19 service has been suspended, but Route 19 had kind of gone from the Allied Red Arrow area up north along Nakoma, generally speaking, and up to Monroe and into campus. Route 40 has 2 loops here. It runs every 30 minutes, but because it'll do either one loop or the other, typically most of the Route 40 service area has service once an hour. It will either do this loop out to Grandview and then down to Hatchery Hill and back to the south transfer point, or it'll do Todd Drive and then do this loop east of Fish Hatchery. But at any rate, all of those routes, the 52, 18, and 40, and the 16 on the east side of the city were all based out of the transfer points. Route 16 runs every 30 minutes from the south transfer point to the east, towards the east transfer point. There were also a handful of additional routes that would run only during certain times. For example, Route 59 replaced Route 52 on weekends and had some additional service area east along McKee and towards the the Fitchburg City Hall and Library here. Route 75 runs along McKee and up Fish Hatchery during rush hour only. Route 47 also has been suspended. I should have put that on here, I apologize, but Route 47 was a peak period addition to Route 40 that would bypass the South Transfer Point and go downtown. And then Route 49 was a one-way loop that would operate through the East Sherrill corridor and Fish Hatchery Road and to the South Transfer Point, continuing as Route 44 into the UW campus. That's kind of a summary of existing service. We have ridership data. So the dots are representative of how many people board the bus stop at each stop. I'm not going to go through every stop here, but I just want to show you that that's some data that we have available for the city of Fitchburg as well as the rest of the system. And now I'll talk about the draft plan. Andrew, did you have a question again, or?
Yeah, this time I do.
Okay,
could you just specify when that data? I think that was 2020 data. Just want to.
This was February of 2020. So this was I literally ran this part. I mean, we have it. We normally do it twice a year. This particular data, I ran the analysis literally just right up until there was like a Tuesday morning where COVID really hit. And so I did it up until the week before that, but we have it we normally do it twice a year, going back about 5-10 years or so.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So going into the draft plan, you can see the service will be more consistent. So you will have, rather than these additional service that take over on weekends and during peak periods, you'll have the same set of routes that will operate generally throughout the day. So on the west side, I'll kind of go from west to east. Again, Route D2 runs every 30 minutes on the west side of the city, going into Madison along Allied Drive, and then going up Midvale and Odana and Monroe Street into Madison. You have Route H largely replacing Route 18, as I mentioned, on that orbital route going across town, across the Beltline corridor and up towards ultimately East Town Mall. At Park and Badger, Route H would turn into Route G, going to East Town Mall again. And in the westbound direction, the same thing, Route G would come in and stop at the end of its line and then turn into Route H and keep going. So you'd have that continuous service. And then you have Route B here. Route B will serve a lot of ridership and density along the Fish Hatchery Road corridor. So rather than being based out of the South Transfer Point as Route 40 is, Route B will continue directly up Badger Road, up Park Street, and into Madison. The service will operate every 15 minutes. So as you can see, it does not make as many loops and does not serve as much coverage as Route 40 does, but the frequency will be quadrupled for many of the people along the line. If you do walk to Fish Hatchery Road, you'll be rewarded with service every 15 minutes and substantially reduced travel times into the city of Madison. As I mentioned before, Route G continues as Route H. It serves the Badger Road corridor in Madison and then comes south on Rimrock and then turns left onto Moreland Road and continues to the east. And that route will operate every 30 minutes as well. During the middle of the weekday, all of these routes will operate every 30 minutes or better. We also have a handful of rush hour only routes. Route 75 remains basically unchanged. So that service will be there. We're working with Epic to see if that service needs to be adjusted or increased, and so we're working with them. But as far as the transit network redesign is concerned, that service will remain the same. We now have Route Z. Route Z largely replaces Route 49. So this is rush hour service only every 30 minutes. And again, serving the East Sherrill corridor like Route 49, but in two directions. And then continuing around Lacey, up Highway MM, Rimrock, John Nolan Drive, and to the Capitol Square. So looking at the access boundary, so this is a 1/4 mile buffer from the transit service. So the light blue areas are areas that are within a 1/4 mile of the transit service. So along McKee, we have service on Route 75, Route D2 again buffered a 1/4 mile, and routes H, G, and Z also buffered a 1/4 mile. There's some areas here like west of 14 that's not really accessible because of the freeway, but just wanted to point that out. Also looking at Fitchburg's identified transit priority areas. So these are generally them highlighted in pink here. West of Verona Road served by Route D2, east of Verona Road also largely served by Route D2 and to some degree Route H. The south of Post Road, west of Fish Hatchery Road area here largely served by Route 40 today and served by Route H with the draft network plan, but also served every 15 minutes by Route B, again with direct service going into Madison. And then this area on East Sherrill and Sain. And we have this area west of Rimrock and west of the Moreland Road intersection. Okay, so I just wanted to, Andrew, do you have another question?
Yeah, we just had one quick question, a clarifying question of, could you go back to maybe the overall map and just show where Route B goes, just to give people kind of the whole network, where now that you've seen it in Fitchburg, maybe now you can understand it better in the whole region.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good flow, sure. So Route B, this is where we were looking at on Fish Hatchery Road. So every 15 minutes, again, over on Badger, up Park Street. So it'll create some nice corridor service on Park Street. Route 5 currently turns right onto West Washington, which does not serve the heart of the university campus. And so Route B conversely will continue up and have some really nice continuous direct service on Park Street to the UW campus, and then turn right, University and Johnson Street corridor, State Street, Capitol Square, East Washington Avenue where it overlaps with Route A, and then continues north on North Street and Commercial to make its way to Packers Avenue. Up Packers Avenue, left on Northport, and then Troy, School Road, and Northport again, and then terminating up near the Central Wisconsin Center, near it's a green road or green drive or something. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, but this is Knutson. So up at basically the end of the urbanized Northport corridor. So that's where Route B would go. Okay. I'm getting to the end here. I just wanted to compare this again a little bit more directly with the existing service. So if you look, starting again on the west, I'm just working from west to east because it's convenient. Route 52 is shifted from King James to Anton to be a little bit more direct towards where it's going. Now it's more oriented towards the east, towards downtown Madison, as opposed to straight north towards the west transfer point. And that service will become more frequent. Looking at the red arrow crescent area, we will no longer have service on Red Arrow and Crescent. That service will be concentrated onto Allied. So people from Red Arrow would need to walk west towards Allied to catch that service. But then when they got it, they would again have that more direct service into Madison. As I mentioned, the service on Fish Hatchery Road will be more frequent and direct. Looking at the area east of Fish Hatchery Road, most of this is in Madison, but there are some parts in Fitchburg. So that loop of Route 40 would no longer be served with the draft network. People in that area would need to walk west towards Fish Hatchery Road. Route 49 service area largely replaced by Route Z going downtown as opposed to the south transfer point. And then looking at the area west of Rimrock and Moreland, that neighborhood currently has Route 16, which goes through Deer Valley and this series of streets here. That service would be more direct on Rimrock and Moreland. There is a sidewalk connection through here, and so they would walk about two or three blocks out towards Rimrock and Moreland and catch Route G there. Looking at some travel times. So this is the estimated travel time from Fish Hatchery and Post to the Capitol Square. So we're including the wait time. Route 40 runs every 30 minutes. So on average, you would wait 15 minutes. You would take Route 40, which would take, looks like about 8 minutes, transfer at the South Transfer Point, and then take Route 5 for the remainder of the trip. The total travel time, including the wait and the transfer, would be roughly 44 minutes today. Looking at the draft plan, you would have a shorter wait and no transfer. And as a result, the total travel time would be reduced by about 10 minutes to about 34.5 minutes. Looking at the area at Allied and Level to the Capitol Square, today, again, on average, a 15-minute wait for Route 18. You take Route 18 to the South Transfer Point, transfer at the South Transfer Point to Route 5, another 16 minutes, and you'd be at the Capitol Square. It'd be an estimated 51 minutes. If you were to consider Route 19, the service is slightly faster. It's the actual path is about the same in terms of distance and time, but because there's no transfer, it's slightly faster than the combination of routes 18 and 5. But because it runs hourly, if you were to choose that option, the estimated travel time would be a little bit longer at 65 minutes. To some degree, these two route options would work together, but anyway, just kind of showing those travel times. With the draft plan, you would wait on average 15 minutes for Route D2, which would come every 30 minutes. And then you would take Route D2 directly to the Capitol Square with no transfer, the total travel time being 48 minutes. So just some key takeaways here. Bus routes will be designed to be longer, straighter, and more frequent. Transfer points will be eliminating unnecessary delays in indirection. The system overall will be simpler, more logical, and easier to use. So the way we are going to further refine this plan is through an amendment process. So we are not going to, so what we'd like to do is have a very transparent process where we lay out plausible amendments to the draft plan, and then we let our policymakers, the City of Madison's Common Council and Transportation Policy and Planning Board, which is our oversight committee, but also with input and direction from the City of Fitchburg and their policymakers to decide how to make amendments to the map. So we'll lay out those amendments and then let policymakers decide which ones to incorporate. Next steps, please, we have a survey out on our website. Again, that website, mymetrobus.com/redesign. It only takes a few minutes, and that's very helpful for us to know how the system is performing, or the draft network is performing, and what we can do to help change it and make it better. That the final plan with the amendments will be adopted this summer, and then we will implement it in the summer of 2023. So probably June of 2023. So that'll give us a year to make the preparations that we need to do to implement the new network, as well as a couple of months before the real rush comes on when the weather starts getting cold and school years start and the ridership really increases. So having that couple of months will help us iron out any details. So as I mentioned, we're trying to put together these draft amendments. So that's primarily what we're asking for here, and trying to get feedback to help us shape those amendments so that we can put that through the process. That's the end of my presentation. Again, Transit Network Redesign, our website here, mymetrobus.com/redesign. We also have an email address. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and email us, metroredesign@cityofmadison.com. That email goes directly to myself, as well as others working directly on the project. So thank you. And I think, Andrew, will you help us with the questions and comments?
Yeah, you bet. So what I'd like to do first is just kind of give everybody we'll do clarifying questions first, and then I just want to remind everybody who's out there, if you want to give your facilitator the question, I know that Joe's already gotten a few, feel free to pass those on. And then I know we have some questions here in the audience. So first, on the clarifying question front, Mike, do you want to specifically look at the Route 75? Right now that's an existing route. It's a commuter route that's going from Verona through Fitchburg up to downtown. But I think we had a specific question about that.
Sure, I'll just put the overall map here. Route 75 operates rush hour only, comes up Verona Road, McKee, Fish Hatchery, continuing up Fish Hatchery, West Washington to the square.
Remain unchanged, basically.
Yes, the 75 is not proposed to be changed with this project. It's intended to remain the same. We do work with Epic, who sponsors and funds the route. And so they do have a couple ideas. They're interested in a little bit more service and things like that. No plans associated with the transit network redesign project.
Okay. We had two questions related to stop locations. I think Michael Bartnick's question might have been more specific about Fish Hatchery up by Badger and Park. The other question was just specific routing, and from my understanding, we don't have that level of information yet. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Generally speaking, the bus routes on on this network will serve the bus stops that are there. So for example, if Route 1 is replaced by Route A, the bus stops are generally there on the street, and so they will just serve those bus stops. There will be some streets that do not currently have bus stops. Normally, we like to locate those about a quarter of a mile apart, generally at places where it's convenient and safe to cross streets. So at crosswalks and traffic signals and things like that, we do not have that level of detail yet. There will also be a number of bus stops that will be closed because there's no longer service on that street. We'll also take a look at things like where we have shelters and seating, things like that, amenities that need to be perhaps shifted around because we'll have more service someplace, more ridership someplace, transfers taking place, that kind of thing. We also have a goal of making all of our bus stops ADA accessible with the concrete boarding platform.
And follow up on that note, will this plan include fully accessible buses was one question.
Yes, all of our buses are fully accessible low floor buses that accommodate wheelchairs. And all of the BRT buses will be as well. They'll be 60-foot long, so they'll be longer, articulated with a joint in the middle. And they'll be electric. They will also be ADA accessible, and they'll have the same space for 2 wheelchairs as the current buses do.
Awesome, thank you. All right, any more clarifying questions before we move on to some of the rationale? Okay, well, I think we had 2 questions about the rationale so far. So one was, why does the Z only come from the east? If it's going to City Hall, would it make more sense to be accessible from McKee, Fish Hatchery, or Northwest Fitchburg? And really, I'll take a quick shot at this, and then Mike, feel free to jump on. Basically, both from John Nolan and kind of the east side of Fitchburg, kind of that connectivity that's currently utilizing the 49, the Z was really a replacement for that as an express route. There was a lot of talk both at the Transportation and Transit Commission and kind of in internal meetings of getting some access to City Hall, and that's a very specific, important kind of civic need for engagement. That's one thing that we've been looking at extensively, and a specific example would be to bring that B line down further south. In this current iteration, just from a budget neutral position, that 15-minute service would cost too much to bring further south, to roughly, I think, 1.5 miles to do that round trip. But that could be a future expansion, so certainly the B would be a big, high-frequency service down to Fish Hatchery Road, and could make a lot of sense in the future in terms of electric bus charging, that sort of thing. So that's, I guess, a quick rationale. I'll let Mike know, and then Joe, if you have any additional follow-up questions, feel free to let us know.
Oh, yeah, that's accurate. We're trying to pick up a lot of the current Route 49 service area. So that's along East Sherrill, kind of both ends of East Sherrill near Fish Hatchery and near Lacey. So we're trying to pick up those nodes on each end of each East Sherrill looking to the west at McKee, that's more or less covered by Route 75, and then north on Fish Hatch is covered by Route B. We're also trying to pick up some of the area around Rimrock and Moreland, especially west of Rimrock. These areas do have service with Route G, but we've felt it was an asset to give them, at least during the rush hour, direct service into town. And then so connecting those dots, kind of the logical path north is John Nolan Drive. And then as a kind of a bonus, we think that there may be an opportunity to also get service near the developing areas east of Highway 14 and Highway MM there. So that's just kind of how the dots fell in the line for us.
So yeah, Joe, let us know if you had any follow-up questions on that. Alderman Molinaro also had a question from a resident, and maybe it would be good to switch back into the Fitchburg routes map for this, just kind of zooming in. Can the D2 be shifted to the east instead of going down Allied Drive, and that there's a number of residents in that part of the district that would have a longer walk, and that there's not a good walking route because of the hills in there. So I guess the question is, and that's specifically near Allied, the D2 there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so right now we're showing Route D2 on Allied, but not Red Arrow. It is possibility we are looking at service on. There would be some other ways to connect this from Midvale to Anton by going, for example, on Genuine, which is this street here, and then up Red Arrow. We would like to avoid doing the full loop on Red Arrow and Crescent, but there are some other ways. It's kind of the classic trade-off of indirection for the people on the bus versus access for people walking to the bus. But that is a possible option that we could look at.
We did have a comment. Could we use the interactive map just so we can zoom in a little bit tighter? And I can do that too if you don't have it up.
Yeah, we can. You mean?
Yeah, sharing your screen. Yeah, just so we can zoom in a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. Let me stop sharing and open the PDF.
Oh, no, I think the interactive map online, the web map.
Oh, yeah, we can do that too. It'll take me a second to get there.
Sure. I can do it.
Okay.
So and Mike's team did a great job of setting up this web map, and so this is all on online that you can definitely check out, and it shows both. So there's some great options I'll note, showing both the existing and the layers over here, showing both the current network if you'd like to check out the current network, or the future proposed network. So as Mike was noting, in this specific area, there are a lot of options. For example, right now it's kind of doing this loop down Crescent up to Red Arrow and back. There are other options that we're exploring in order to reduce the walking path for folks. So, and with that, I'll stop sharing, and then Mike, you can take over.
Oh, okay, great. But if you, just on there as well, if you click on the line, it will tell you what route you're looking at. But anyway, I'll just I'll go back to what I had up here.
And then the follow-up question from Joe on the D2, I believe, is how long would a bus ride take in the current proposal if someone wanted to ride from the end of the B to City Hall? So going from where the B and the Z meet, switching routes.
The B and the Z meet downtown in the Capitol Square? Going from like Fish Hatchery Road up through downtown and then transferring to the Z and coming back down.
Right.
I'm not able to do that in my head at the moment. It'd probably be, let's see. I mean, it would take a while. And as Andrew mentioned, the other option that we're exploring is extending the B south along Fish Hatchery. But just to answer the question, let's see, that's about 25 minutes. Plus about another 30. So it'd be about an hour if the schedules line up and then if you add however much however long it takes to transfer, maybe another 15 minutes to wait for the B and the Z. So it's a long circuitous route.
And just to be clear, the Z is only running during commuter times. So
Right.
just weekdays, in the AM and PM rush hours. So. I do want to note, so that was most of the questions online. I wanted to jump over to folks in the audience if you have questions, and feel free if you do and you want to come up to one of the microphones, if anybody does.
Hi, this is Katie Sellner, a former Metro employee, and I live in Fitchburg. I just have a question about the Z. Hi, Mike. Why was the Z or the 49 now? It used to obviously go up on and go through, you could get off maybe at the hospital or what have you. And now basically, if you're going to take the Z, you can basically just go to the square. Did you find most of the commuters were going to the square, or what was the reason basically for that change?
Yeah. Hi, Katie.
Hi.
And thanks for all of your dedicated work at Metro. So as I kind of talked about before, we kind of connecting the dots along East Sherrill and then connecting it to the areas along Rimrock, and then trying to get it downtown in a way that doesn't duplicate the 75 and the B. Now, one thing that we're also looking at is, should it go up John Nolan to the Capitol Square, or for example, it could traipse across on Olin and then go up and more favor the UW campus. So that would be an alternative that we could also look at. So, right now it's kind of a trade-off. So people taking Route 49 and then continuing on Route 44 have a direct ride to the UW campus. But if they're going to the Capitol Square, they have to transfer. Whereas with the Z, they would have a direct ride to the Capitol Square, but then if they wanted to go west towards UW campus or UW hospital, they would have to transfer. We hope that in either way, they'd have a more convenient transfer to Route A and other service that goes west that would be more frequent and easy to understand than what's available today. But to answer your question directly, we kind of have to choose one, either the UW campus or Capitol Square. We've chosen the Capitol Square because it seems to kind of line up with John Nolan Drive and Rimrock and the East Sherrill corridor. But we can look at other options as well.
Okay, I was just wondering, because it seems like even some of your example for commute times, you always show them going to the square, which I know is a big draw, but it's not the only draw. And I don't know.
Correct, yeah.
I don't know what's
Yeah,
changed with COVID as far as what actually is happening downtown 2 years ago versus what's happening downtown now. So that's why I ask, because I know that's downtown is important, but there's lots of other employment centers besides downtown, so.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We have to kind of pick one or the other. And if people were willing to look at, dozens more of these travel time comparisons, I could have put more together. But, if you just try to pick two, I just picked the Capitol Square just kind of randomly. But you're right, there are many other destinations. Now, one thing to note too is that Route 5 on the Park Street corridor currently favors the Capitol Square, so it does not go to UW campus. So we're also kind of flipping that there. So people on Route B will now have much more direct access to the UW campus through Route B on Park Street. Now I know, Fish Hatchery Road is not the same as the East Sherrill. Those are completely separate areas with completely separate routes, but just kind of an example of how some of these decisions are somewhat arbitrary. And so, that's the kind of thing that we're looking on feedback on, is should Route Z favor the Capitol Square versus the UW campus?
I'd like to add one thing, Mike. So the G and the H they're crosstown routes. They don't even go downtown. We have a commitment to run those super frequently since we don't have the transfer point system anymore. And they'll be running every 30 minutes all the time. So depending on where you are in Fitchburg, you can connect to it via B, or it goes into Fitchburg a couple of times. But Those will be running every 30 minutes all the time. So that's just another crosstown thing besides going downtown.
I think we had a question here from the audience. Do you want to turn
Thank
the
you.
mic?
Hi, I'm Joe Goss. I live at the north end of Swan Creek, and currently, before the pandemic, walked about 3/4 of a mile down to East Sherrill, and then took the bus very happily to campus. A colleague here with me is the same way, that way. So I'm intrigued by the idea of County Road MM, Rimrock up to John Nolan, and then the idea that you suggested, which is maybe Olin over to Park Street and then north to campus. I wonder, and this is just an idea along the lines of D1, D2, is it possible that alternate buses could go to the Capitol versus to the campus?
Okay, so thanks. So the question was about Route D1 and D2, and I'm going to go back to the overall map.
Was
Here.
really around.
So as they
the question is around Z, and whether we could do something like D1, D2, which is that the buses alternate.
I see.
Destinations.
Yeah, that's so the question is Route Z, and could we have, for example, every other Route Z either turn right and go towards the Capitol Square, or turn left and go down Olin and up towards the UW campus? Yeah, technically that would be a possibility. One of the things to consider with that is when you take a route that runs every 30 minutes and what I call cut it in half. So now you have two routes that run hourly. Hourly service is a very low level of service. And so, you know, if you're going to the UW campus and the route that the trip that you're going to take to get you there is the bus that happens to go towards the Capitol Square, it would be more convenient to simply go to the Capitol Square and then transfer to a bus heading west, as opposed to waiting another half an hour for the bus that goes directly to campus. When we get to 15-minute service and then splitting it into two 30-minute routes, that's a little bit more amenable, because 30-minute service is still relatively frequent. If you have to wait 15 minutes for, you know, quote, the other Route D, that's a little bit more amenable. There are some other options too. For example, we hypothetically could have it go to the Capitol Square and then continue west. We'd like to avoid that, because we'd like to avoid what we currently do, which is have just a real jumble of routes in the downtown area. We'd like to simplify, and then if we have service hours, put that service into those service hours into just making the routes more frequent. The other things that we can do hypothetically is do a one-way loop. So rather than going up to the Capitol Square and then coming back down the same way, it could do a one-way loop. One-way loops are also not great, because it's a little bit more, it's very difficult to ride the loop in the opposite direction that you want to go. But for some routes, sometimes that's the best solution. So there are some other ways to do it. And that's the kind of feedback that we're looking for.
Great, thank you.
May I just suggest another longer-term solution? If we were to extend the B line further south to the City Hall, then taking that Z to City Hall and then transferring up to the B line would be another great option. So just throwing it out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Andrew.
All right, I think we have answered all the current questions. Are there additional questions that folks have? Yep, sure.
Hi, I'm Matthew Jones. I work on campus. Similar to my colleague's question, I was just sort of curious about how that Z is working, because, I mean, currently the 49 turns into the 44 and goes straight to campus, which for the people of us who live in the East Sherrill Parkway area, it works kind of perfectly. And so now I'm just trying to figure out how many transfers is that going to be, because I was trying to look at it on the route, and it looks like I have to transfer like 3 times, going from the Z to like the A or the B to like the 80 just to get back to campus. And that seems incredibly counterproductive. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly how many transfers is that? Because if I wasn't sure if the Z ran to the B, or does it solely go up toward campus? I wasn't sure if that ran both directions, or
Yeah,
how it connects.
so Route Z runs in both directions during rush hour only. So it would essentially go back and forth in both directions, whereas Route 49 does a one-way loop down here. So to get to campus, you would take Route Z up to the Capitol Square, and then you would transfer to either, depending on where you're going, either Route A or B. Routes A and B combined would have service every 7.5 minutes. And then you'd also have Route F and Y, which would be a separate part of the BRT service. So you'd have a bus every few minutes heading west from the Capitol Square. So that would take you to either this station at East Campus Mall or this station at Orchard Street. Or if you were going west, you could take it to University Bay, the next BRT station. BRT will run along Campus Drive, so there won't be any stops along Campus Drive. And so that would give you walk access to the majority of the UW campus. If you did want to transfer to Route 80, you would transfer to Route 80 on Lake Street here, and then you'd ride up Observatory Hill and towards Route 80. So those are kind of your options there. You could also, depending on how things go, another option would be to get off slightly sooner and then transfer to Route D. Route D would go down Broome-Bassett and also through the University of Wisconsin campus along University Avenue, and then the same in the other direction as well. But Route D would run every 15 minutes or so. And so, it wouldn't be as frequent, but it would be a slightly more direct than transferring to routes A, B, F, and Y. So it would kind of depend on how those schedules work out. I should also mention that we also have retained some budget for adding rush hour service onto this during the peak periods. For example, on the isthmus on what's route C and D, currently it's routes 28 and 38. We have routinely overload problems along those corridors, as well as Old University Avenue and some other places. So we've retained some contingency to add some additional service during peak periods.
Sort of.
Does that answer your question, or if you?
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, pretty much. But a sort of follow-up question. So I know that this is considered a draft plan. Is there any likelihood that this won't happen at all and we can keep current service, or is this for sure going to happen? I just gotta figure out if anything.
I think what we'd like to do is make it work so that it's as best for everybody and works. So there are some changes that we functionally have to make for bus rapid transit. Like I said, we could just make some of those changes in the bus rapid transit corridor. But we, again, would like to see some of the improvements in frequency extended to other parts of the network. We also have some issues. The transfer points themselves, they are sort of bursting at the seams. We are running out of capacity for the buses to actually fit in them. As the city and the transit network grows to the east and west and south, we're running into a situation where a bus leaving the transfer points can't make it out and back and do a loop in 30 minutes. So we're running into a situation where we really don't have the capacity to grow in the future. And so we'd like to set up a system that has more of a function, more ability to grow as the system grows. Finally, the transfer points themselves have reached their useful lifespan. And so if we were to continue using them, we would have to reinvest in them, which would be a capital project, which would cost funding, of course. But we'd also like to know kind of what the future of the system is, so that we don't invest in those and then ultimately go to something else. So to answer your basic question, we would like to make the system work. And if we have to make changes to do that, then that's what we'd like to do.
It's me again. I just have a follow-up. How long is your commute right now?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. So if you took the Z to the square, and then you took from the square to campus, and you said the buses would potentially be running every 4 to 7 minutes that they could catch from somewhere near the square, what type of commute time would that be for that gentleman's, what type of time difference would that be currently if he has about a 30-minute versus going from the Z to another one of these new routes?
Okay, yeah, so Route Z runs on what I call a 1 hour circuit. So what that means is it takes an hour to drive from the Capitol Square down to the southern terminal and then back. So it takes 1 hour to make the entire circuit. So it takes roughly 30 minutes or slightly less to go from Fish Hatch and East Sherrill up to the Capitol Square. So if you're somewhere along here, I'm going to say it's probably going to be more like 20 minutes to get to the Capitol Square, and that's because you're bypassing the South Transfer Point and transferring to the Route 44 and some of the deviations that the 44 does. And so then you'd probably have another, I'm going to say 5-minute wait and then 5 to 10 minute trip to wherever you're going on campus. So I hesitate to say that it will be the same, but I don't think it will be significantly longer than about 5 minutes longer. And then, so just to dovetail on that, so again, people who are going to the Capitol Square from East Sherrill now have to do that in the other direction. So they would not have to make that transfer and trip, but you would. And then just to put a bow on that as well, we're not committed to making this be the route if it's not popular. If it will work with our associates in Fitchburg, if it should go to the UW instead, then that's an option as well.
No, I was just wondering,
Again,
because
it's kind of an arbitrary choice.
Right, but from like the Swan Creek area, which is where we are, we're kind of at the end. It's already gotten to that point. Now it's just shooting up toward the South Transfer Point. But if it's at that and just shooting up toward the square, then it doesn't sound like it would be a whole lot longer going to the square and then just, taking a bus the extra
Right.
5 or 7 minutes over. So it might sound worse at first, but time-wise, it might not be that much difference. And then if you did want to go to the square, you could just, bypass all the traffic on Park and the South Transfer Point and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, again, you're kind of trading your gaining time by going up John Nolan as opposed to going up Fish Hatch and doing some of the deviations, waiting as it turns into the 44. I know it's only a couple minutes, but and then going up Gilson and then coming back and then going up Mills and waiting for waiting as Mills is a relatively slow street. So you're gaining some time by going from that corridor to Highway MM, Rimrock, John Nolan Drive, but then you're losing it because now you have to transfer to go west. So I'm guessing that trade-off is probably somewhat not in your favor, but I don't think it's going to be a significantly longer trip. Okay. That's just, again, I'm kind of guessing here a little bit without actually looking at the run times and without actually scheduled service. But it's a little bit of guesswork. Now, if you want to send us an email, we can look at it in a little more detail.
Yeah, we are trying to avoid situations where people have to take 3 buses. That's a giant drag, and we wouldn't want that. So we are looking at how many people need to get to Observatory. I mean, I can tell you right now, at least with University and Johnson on the east side of campus to the square, that is going to be the most frequent transit corridor in Wisconsin. But that being said, if you want to get up further to Observatory, that's pretty far, and that is a drag. So that's why we have these meetings and hearing about different people's trips and trying to avoid the situations where you have to take 3 buses, even if they're super frequent. It's something that we can look into.
Well, thanks, everybody. We did have some questions come in from District 2. We also had a clarifying question I think Mike touched on earlier, but just to elaborate. are there going to be fewer stops on the rapid transit lines as compared to the routes being replaced? And I think in this particular case, we're talking about the B, I believe.
Yeah, good question. So the question is, will there be fewer stops on the bus rapid transit routes? And the answer is yes. If you look at Route A, you can see where the stations are. Ultimately, we'll have generally that type of stop spacing for Route B as well. So generally every other stop. So we'll close roughly every other stop and have station spacing that's roughly a half mile, maybe a little bit less than that, depending on where the intersections work out and that kind of thing. But so I think the total number of stops along the stretch of Fish Hatchery Road, I think, is on the order of like 4 or 5.
Awesome, thank you. And then the other question was, has Metro done any analysis on students using the bus to go to school, and specifically Fitchburg residents going to Madison schools, either Madison West or middle schools?
We don't, yes, we have, I'm going to show you, so we have this ridership by bus stop analysis. So we don't do this, we don't really know where people are going. So every time somebody gets on a bus and they swipe a card or they pay cash or whatever, that's a fare box event that then we can, on the back end, trace to the stop that it was likely used at. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And so this is kind of the primary database that we have for understanding the travel patterns in the city. Unfortunately, we don't know where people get off the bus. Even if we did, we really have no way to trace ons and offs. But we do have this type of boarding data at, for example, the high schools and other places like that. So we don't specifically tie ridership to purpose or what type of card they're using. We do work closely with the school district, and we're working closely with them on this project to iron out ridership associated with the schools. I'll say that serving the high schools with a fixed route bus service is quite difficult because we have kind of downtown, which is where a lot of the routes go through. And then we have the orbital routes G and H. And so then that means generally any trip that's not in a radial direction between downtown and the neighborhood or on that one orbital series of routes is likely to have to transfer. And so it's difficult to serve those 4 Madison high schools without relying on a transfer at some point. But we are working with the school district to try to make those trips as doable as possible.
And Mike, I don't know if you want to be specific about Madison West, for example. So, kids on Fish Hatchery, you could take the B up to the E, I believe. And similarly on the west side, taking the D up to the E as well.
Yeah, so West High School, we have Route E along Regent Street and serving West High School just east of Highland. So you could take Route B and then transfer to Route E. You could also take Route H and then transfer to Route E going up Whitney Way as well, depending on kind of where you're coming from. So we're looking at those to see, how those transfers can work as well as they can. There are 3 other Madison high schools. One is Memorial, which is on the BRT route. So they'll be served pretty well. We also have La Follette on the east side on Flom Road. So they'll be served with Route G. Again, that orbital crosstown route along the Beltway Highway 51 corridor. We're looking specifically at how service can be served better at La Follette High School with, for example, Route C3 here, which gets pretty close, but really doesn't provide service to La Follette High School. And then the final one is East High School at 4th and East Washington here. So that will be well served by routes A and B, as well as Route D1. And so one of the reasons that we decided to have Route B use this path on Commercial and North Street is so that we could put that frequent service in front of East High School, providing quality, frequent service to the north side and the south side, if people from the south side are going to East High School.
Okay. Are there any additional questions? Yep. Yeah. Why don't you come up?
Hi, this is Joe Goss again. I appreciate the value of getting someplace faster, but also think about folks in wheelchairs and who are disabled in perhaps some way. And I worry about the distance that they have to travel in order to get to a bus stop, particularly since many of them will be reduced in terms of volume. To what degree have you addressed that area of concern and providing equal access on the part of folks who have some disability?
Good question. So when I'll just go up to this slide here. So I want to be clear that as we talk about coverage and ridership, moving in the ridership direction does provide that frequent and direct service. It does also reduce some coverage. And when we talk about reducing coverage, we're not simply talking about inconvenience for a few people to some degree. We're removing some access to the system from people. And so as we design and plan the system, we're working hard to minimize this. A lot of it is very qualitative. We're looking at specific areas of how to provide the best service to people. For example, one of the areas where we noticed a lack of service where it's needed is along Olin Avenue here. Particularly, there's an apartment building called the Romnus Apartments on Olin. And so we're looking at adding a route along Olin, going down to the south side here to provide that service. So as we add coverage in or make those coverage adjustments, that's fundamentally the area, that's fundamentally what we're interested in. I'll also mention that there's paratransit service that comes with fixed route service. The paratransit service is door-to-door rides for people with disabilities who qualify for paratransit service. We've made the commitment not to reduce the paratransit service area. Normally, the paratransit service area is based on the fixed route service. You buffer the fixed route service 3/4 of a mile, and that's the service area for paratransit. So there, without any other changes, there would be some very minor cuts to paratransit, just very little slivers of the city. We've decided at a policy level not to make those reductions. There will be some significant areas of the city that will receive new paratransit. For example, on Southwest Madison here along McKee, that all-day service does not exist along McKee and Muirfield. So that will be an area where people will have new access to paratransit service. And then also on the east side of the city near Milwaukee, just east of Sprecher on Wyalusing and Cottage Grove Road. So those are areas that currently do not have fixed route service and do not have access to paratransit service. And so those are some areas where paratransit service will be expanding. I also mentioned that we have a goal of making all of our bus stops ADA accessible. So we will continue on our quest to make all of the bus stops that we're serving ADA accessible with accessible concrete boarding pads.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We had two clarifying questions on that. So I think you answered one of them of, are there gaps in the paratransit service now that routes have changed? And then the other question was, does paratransit extend into Fitchburg? And I can't answer that one. Yes, it does. So.
It does, yeah. And the other question was about gaps in paratransit. If you're talking about what we'd call donut holes, In between routes, no, there are no, that service is all continuous. If you're surrounded by service, you would be in the area. So we don't have any donut holes. I'm not sure if that's exactly what's meant by the question.
Correct, yep. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I believe that someone has their hand up. Sonia?
Hi, yes, thank you for taking my my comment. So I live in the part of Fitchburg near Allied Drive and Seminole Highway, and I just first wanted to say, like, good job. I really like the direction of this plan is heading. In particular, how D2 goes down and serves the McKee Road and Super Target, and how like the H line goes east-west. I'm speaking on behalf of my son, who is a transit rider in the family currently. He's in middle school and he takes the bus to Cherokee Middle School, and he also, takes it to his friend's house in downtown. And yes, and specifically I wanted to say, yes, we're moving away from those loops because they are extremely confusing for riders, and they're apparently confusing for bus drivers too, because sometimes the bus drivers are going the wrong way on the loops. And I had a couple questions, and I'm sorry I missed the first half hour of this. You may have covered this. Did you, at the very end of your presentation, Mike, you showed a map that looked different than this map? There was a route that went all the way up Midvale Boulevard, I thought.
Stop me if you see it.
I thought it
He
was
means
just at
the
the
original
very
map
end.
before the draft map. The one
What?
that has Sherman.
The ridership map.
Yeah.
Oh, it was
Okay, yeah. So
that
this
one.
was just
That one.
this one. Okay, yeah.
Oh,
So I was kind of going through, and then that's okay that you came in the middle. What I was describing is kind of the process of how we got here.
okay.
This was an earlier draft.
Yes.
That
I
was
got
that.
Okay.
So yeah, so this was kind of an earlier draft that evolved into this.
Got it. So yes, I was like half paying attention at that time, and I was like, oh, I love that. I would love that connection straight up Midvale Boulevard. So I see that you had considered that for the ridership alternative. I was wondering why that route straight up Midvale Boulevard, that would connect like the Allied Drive area to the BRT line, why that was dropped.
Yeah, good question. So we made a number of changes. One issue was we had a significant amount of complaints about Route E just being circuitous and overlapping Route A, and then going around the hospital loop and going down Regent. We also heard a lot from people in your neighborhood around Seminole and the Beltline that they were looking for more direct service into town, and so that's kind of how we reacted. I'll also say that we have a handful of draft amendments on our website that you may want to look through. One of them, amendment number 5, looks at this general area in the near west side of Madison and kind of rearranges Route X and Route E. So you may want to take a look at that amendment and see if you like it. And then the other amendment is amendment number 7, which would reroute Route D2 from Midvale over to Nakoma, which would make this slightly more direct and also provide some service in this area along Nakoma and Seminole Highway, but it would not provide service along Midvale or this combined frequent service along the east end of Odana. So you might want to take a look and see those amendments, just so you get a complete picture. And as I mentioned towards the end as well, we're not choosing amendments. We are laying out possible amendments and then leaving it to our policymakers to decide which ones to include. Okay.
So I have one last question, and I had attended one of the previous planning meetings and asked this, but it was typed into it. I never stuck around for the end. I never heard you answer.
That's okay.
So one of the things that I noticed in the previous discussion was it seemed like a lot of the assumptions were about needing to get people across town. So, getting somebody, or, was focusing on the network being designed to get people across town. And I guess what I was thinking is, aside from making sure people get to MATC, which is the A route, and making sure that people, from anywhere in the city, and making sure that people can get to the UW and the hospital from anywhere in the city, I would question that assumption. I would, start from the premise of making sure that anybody on the west of the isthmus can get to anywhere else west of the isthmus, and anywhere east of the isthmus can get anywhere else east of the isthmus. I wondered if you had anything to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to stay away from serving specific trips. In other words, for example, we have somebody who might say, as we just talked about, well, I go to the UW or I go to the Capitol Square, and trying to stay away from serving specific trips. Not that we're not considering those examples, but we're trying to serve kind of all trips for anybody who's trying to make a trip, understanding that some trips are made more often than others, trying to serve those major destinations. And so that's why we're providing a lot of these transfer opportunities between routes. So for example, if you're on the north side and you want to go to Madison College on the east side, we're setting up this convenient transfer between route B and route A so that you can transfer and go make that trip from the east side to the east side, north side to the east side, west side to the south side, et cetera. That's why we have routes G and H on this orbital pattern going around the south and east side of the city to avoid people having to make transfers where the service is not as frequent, or go all the way downtown and then come all the way back. So it is a complex puzzle, and we're trying to refine it to be as good as it can be, knowing that we'll probably never get it perfect. But I think what we'd like to, one of the things that we really would like to take out of this plan, if possible, is retain as much of that frequent service as we can. If you look at the red lines on this map of routes that run every 15 minutes throughout the day, we basically have none of that service today. The system is primarily buses that run every 30 minutes or to some degree, or in many places once an hour. And so we'd like to retain as much of that frequency as we can, while making adjustments as needed to serve those trips and provide that coverage that's needed. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Sonia. So at this point, we have two remaining questions, and I just want to kind of say we're getting kind of closer to the end. We want to kind of end by 7:30. If you have additional questions, specifically, generalizable questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We can get those. Otherwise, we'll start to kind of any additional questions we get, we'll just answer after the meeting. But the two questions would. One was from Alder Maldonado asking for the cost associated with paratransit. And so that is just a cost per percentage of fixed route. So the partners basically, we divvy up all fixed route in the metro area from Madison, Fitchburg, the other partners, and that percentage is then applied to the paratransit service. If so, for example, we're roughly 2.5% of all fixed route, so we get 2.5% of the paratransit cost. So, and then I know that Michael, you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
Thank you. First, I just want to thank you all for this public service opportunity here. So I would ask along the lines of the persons with disabilities to kind of follow up on that. I am going to be looking at it from that perspective, because I think that the paratransit serves a purpose. My view is that it should be a supplement to fill in gaps in some of the areas there, but it should not be a replacement for full accessibility. For example, the reason I asked about the B route or other main routes, if somebody lives on one of those main routes and needs to use a wheelchair, that person should be able to access it without having to call paratransit, because that would allow the person to just decide, hey, I want to go. So my concern about I think it's great to have these metro, the main lines there, rapid transit lines. My concern is that in cutting down the number of stops, that you're going to deny the opportunity for somebody with a wheelchair to be able to just get on the bus almost spontaneously, or somewhat regularly, every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes, the bus is going to be there. But if, we have to take, I don't know what the distance is between the routes. So I'm kind of advocating for a general policy principle of making the main routes as accessible to persons with disabilities as they are to everyone else. And I just wanted to put that out on the table so that as a discussion item for you that are involved in the process, as well as for members of the audience that may have a similar interest. And again, thank you for putting on these meetings.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for those comments. If I understand, I think what you're asking for is more stops along the BRT route, along Route B.
For example, right. I mean, I live along Route B, and the current, I think it's 40 and 18, et cetera. But, that same issue affects persons with disabilities throughout the metropolitan region.
Yep, understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we had one more question from Alderman Maldonado. Is the redesign process clearly advertised on the buses in multiple languages?
Yeah, we have flyers on the bus. We also have materials at some of our transfer points. We have some of the materials at Madison libraries. I think we were working to get it in Fitchburg libraries. I don't know if that's there yet. And we were also doing a handful of other ways to try to advertise this project as much as possible. We have the survey, as I mentioned. The survey is also in several languages. As I mentioned, we're doing several other Facebook and radio and television ads to get the word out as well.
Thanks, Mike. Could you go to your last slide just to pull up that website?
Of course. Yeah, and we were talking about additional questions. Also, just that email again, metroredesign@cityofmadison.com. Feel free to use that as well if you have further questions.
So that really is the best website that has all this information on it. I'll actually share my screen real fast just to show that. And so this is really, this is basically where all that is stored. So we do have the survey here on the top. The draft plan, you can review that draft plan. The map, the interactive map is here. There's some additional analysis that was done with affordable housing. And then here are the draft plan amendments. And then again, a lot more analysis that was done, the travel time maps, and that puts it in different places. And so that should be, a great resource for folks who are interested. Really, as far as following up, I think the number one thing is to take the survey, and that's here. So you just click that. Metro will be sharing the results from that, both regionally and specific to Fitchburg. I think also emailing both myself and your alders and Metro at that I'll let Mike put that email address back up. At that email address for those specific questions, those specific route adjustments that may or may not work well for you. That's exactly what we want to hear in this process. As far as the next steps go, so right now, this is kind of that first Fitchburg meeting at the community, at the council of the whole meeting on April 27th. We'll be talking a little bit more about intra-city transit. So that would be potentially the prospect of having, a shared ride taxi or some other service, senior shuttle, as well as this information. So that'll be another opportunity for folks to weigh in. If you've had a chance to look at the stuff on the website and you have more questions, I'll be presenting that. and Metro will be available for questions. So that'll be another great opportunity. And then finally, we are, through part of the Transportation and Transit Committee, we're updating the transit plan, and that's really going to be the formalized process to accept some of these changes through council. So as far as Fitchburg routes go, those will be approved in May ahead of kind of an overall network redesign approval in May and June for the whole region. And so that's kind of on the Fitchburg side. So certainly emailing me, emailing Mike, and filling out that survey are some of the best, and then showing up at some of these upcoming meetings, both transportation and transit, which is always a great place to let your voice be heard, and then the council committee of the whole and the council meeting. So with that, any additional questions on next steps? Yep.
So when you say in May, is that when, like, we'll know for sure what the exact plan is in May of 2020 or 2022, excuse me?
Sure. So as far as Fitchburg routes are so we'll be basically looking at the feedback we get, and then in May we'll be recommending a draft network to Metro. So for Fitchburg routes.
Okay. Do we know when exactly we'll know, like, what the new plan will be? Like, in case we have to, say, move? Like,
Sure. Yep. And then we'll be sending that to Metro, and then I'm not sure what the timeline is for the Metro region-wide. Mike, do you have that?
Yeah, so we are hoping to have the plan finalized in early June. So it will be, we're going out and doing meetings like this and collecting feedback through the end of April. And then in May, we'll be putting some of the materials together, the amendments and so forth. And then it will start going through the city process. And actually, I think it's more early July actually. So it starts going through the City of Madison process in around the end of May, early June, and ultimately the decision will be made in early July. And so that gives us about a year to make the changes that we need to do.
okay, when you say make the changes, do you mean, how often, will there be a time when it actually, like, is it gonna be a gradual change, or is it gonna be a switch one day or the other sort of thing?
Good question. It actually kind of has to happen all at once. If you think about it, we need to be pretty clear about where the bus routes are and when the schedules run. So we can't really change one route this week and then change another route the next week. So it kind of all has to happen at once. That date will be in June of 2023, probably on a Sunday. We like to switch it over between Saturday and Sunday. So on a Sunday, it'll be the new system. On Saturday, it'll be the current system. And on Sunday, it'll be the new system. And so we need to make the changes to get ready for that, including scheduling the service, changing all the bus stop signs, adding in new bus stops where they don't exist today, closing the bus stops that won't be served anymore, having materials ready for the website, as well as paper materials, timetables and system maps and that kind of thing. The Metro actually had a similar change like this about 25 years ago that implemented the transfer point system. And that again happened on basically one day where things switched over from the old system to the current system. And so it'll have to be kind of similar. We'll continue to have a strong presence on the street and try to get the word out as much as possible so that people know how the new system will work and how they'll have to use it. It's very important that, people that are getting to their jobs know, where their bus is supposed to be at what times that they can do that. So that's very important to us. So we're going to continue to have materials and a presence so that we can let people know what's going on. But it does functionally have to kind of happen all at once.
Thank you.
Those key dates. So transportation and transit meetings happen the second Thursday of every month. So the next one is on April 14th. Then after that, we'll be having the committee of the whole meeting on April 27th at 7 o'clock. And then after that, we'll be going to council which is always the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. So that would be May 10th and May 24th, where we would be having these both referral out to committee and then the approval of a plan. And then, as Mike mentioned, Metro will be approving it in June and July of 2022, and then the actual implementation will occur in sometime in June of 2023. So, on kind of one day. So, with that, I will kind of sign off.
Sorry, Andrew.
Yep.
Sorry, Andrew. If I could just
Oh,
add
yeah.
one quick thing. You can also, if you go to the website here, you can also sign up for email updates. And so we try to keep people informed that way of upcoming meetings and so forth. So I just like to push that. Just go there and click on the right, click sign up for email updates.
That's a great point. And we do the same in Fitchburg. So there is a notify me for public transportation. I push out these upcoming meetings. So that's a great point. And we'll continue to work with Metro on getting the message out in the buses, both potentially over the speaker system and also those flyers that are on the bus. So, and then Fitchburg certainly has a commitment to, once these changes are in place, or at the end of June, communicating over the next year of what changes are coming, especially for those routes that are shifting or being totally relocated entirely. So that was thanks for all your questions. Thanks for coming tonight. If this meeting is being recorded by our lovely Fact TV staff. So please, watch this, and if you have additional questions, feel free to email me or Madison Metro. My email is andrew.mcfadden@fitchburgwi.gov. You can find it on the city website at public transportation, and I really appreciate all your time. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Andrew,
Yeah.
is there a text notification option in addition to the email notifications, just for folks that may have limited internet access?
That's a great point. So I believe that we push text on the Notify Me, but I'm not exactly sure how you sign up for that. So let me double check on that and verify that. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.